Alright guys, welcome to this episode of NBA Draft. Was it fixed? Last night the NBA Draft came out, and turns out the New Orleans Hornets were picked first, kind of surpassing the Charlotte Bobcats, who were pretty much a shoo-in to get the first pick in the NBA Draft, but New Orleans wound up getting the first. Now, what I want to talk about is why New Orleans getting the first pick is significant and what this winds up meaning for the NBA, for New Orleans, and for pretty much all the other teams in the NBA, David Stern as well. Now, if you want to start at the beginning, you kind of have to go back to last year. CP3 winds up wanting a trade out of Louisiana, out of New Orleans. And he wants to go to LA. He wants to go to the Lakers, but David Stern winds up nixing that trade. And then eventually, it's a whole big mess. And then eventually what happens is CP3 winds up going to the Clippers for Eric Gordon, Al-Farouq Amini, and Chris Kaman, and whatever else that they gave up. Now, okay, good trade. Prospect-wise, it was a pretty good trade because you're getting a solid .2 guard, you get a small forward, kind of unproven, and you get Chris Kaman, who is an all-star. Not bad. It wound up not translating because it's the New Orleans Hornets. When you lose someone like CP3, who's probably one of the best point guards in the league, it winds up affecting you. But from a prospect standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, from an individual making that trade, it sounds like a good trade. What I also think was one of the big things of CP3 leaving was David West going to Indiana. I think that he lost one of his main pick and roll guys, and he lost his second scoring option. So he kind of saw that there was nothing around him. I mean, he had Marco Bellinelli. He's a shooter, but I mean, what can you? Who actually didn't have that bad of a year. But I mean, you can't really trust everything that was around CP3. So he wanted to get traded. It's a star-driven league. I mean, Melo got D'Antoni kicked out of New York, and I'm in New York, so face the facts. That's what's wound up happening. So I believe that David West going to Indiana was one of the big steps for CP3 leaving New Orleans. Also, no surprise, David Stern, the league, owns the team, and they will be eventually selling it, but at this moment, David Stern owns the team. So that's where kind of all the conspiracies are coming. Did David Stern rig the NBA draft so he can get the first pick? Or did he make a deal with the new owner, with the eventual new owner, to where he would sell the team and then in return they would give him the number one pick? Kind of a big bugaboo. You also want to look back to the '85 draft, Patrick Ewing. A lot of people have said, and I've heard a lot of this, is that was rigged so that the Knicks could get Ewing. Don't know if that's true or not, but you know what? In this day and age, the league is extremely strict. Refs are blowing calls left and right. Last night's game 2, Miami versus Boston, was blowing calls left and right. A lot of the time, stars do get calls. Michael Jordan barely got any calls. LeBron travels a lot. I'm not LeBron here, but LeBron travels a lot, and he doesn't get away with it. So that's why I think that this was significant. Now, what this all means, courtesy of NBA.com, I'm going to give you guys only the top 14 picks, the top 14 players projected, a mock draft as of 5/31/12. So as of today. And then we'll go into some standings and which teams I think will get better or worse, and which are on that cusp of the playoff bubble. And then eventually I'll give you my opinion. Now, first thing is, the top 14 teams, New Orleans went first, Charlotte went second. Washington went third. I have all my cheat sheets right here. Washington went third. Cleveland fourth. Sacramento fifth. Portland sixth from the Brooklyn Nets. Golden State 7, Toronto 8. No surprise, Toronto's always going to be up there. Detroit 9. New Orleans winds up getting the 10th pick from the Clippers. No, from Minnesota via LA. Clippers. 11, Portland. 12, Milwaukee. 13, Phoenix. Phoenix kind of always been in that top 10 for a while. And no surprise, the Houston Rockets, who wound up having a winning season but are still in the lottery. And I think they have the 16th pick too, yeah. 15 is Philadelphia, 16 is Houston. Because of course, New York. Because of that McGrady trade, which, whatever, I mean, it freed up for Melo and Stat. What can you do? So now, the projected players. New Orleans is projected to get Anthony Davis. Charlotte, Harrison Barnes to Charlotte. Andrew Drummond to Washington. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist to Cleveland. Sacramento gets Thomas Robinson. Portland gets, I can't see shit, Damian Lillard. 7, Bradley Beal. 8, Jeremy Lamb. 9, Detroit gets John Henson. You know what? I'll post all the links to everything so you guys can kind of compare and contrast. Now, which teams do I think will get better? I think let's go one by one and see what people think. New Orleans, if they wind up getting Anthony Davis, which I think will wind up happening, you don't get a whole lot of offense, but you get a lot of defense. But I don't think New Orleans wound up having a record of 21-45. I don't think that they'll go past 35 wins, 30 wins. Because they're still new, they're still trying to find their identity, and they don't have a solid point guard. Charlotte, no matter what they get, if they make it past 20 wins, if they make it past 15 wins, God bless them. Good luck, awesome. Washington might get better. I did hear that they want to trade Richard Lewis and Andre Blatch. Rashard Lewis. Sorry. If you're going to get rid of Rashard Lewis, who used to be great with Seattle, and the beginning of his Orlando Magic contract was really good, and especially that, I think it was the same year as that finals team was really good, but then after that he just tapered off, and he really hasn't been the same ever since he's gotten that huge contract, which is kind of what winds up happening to almost everybody, and that's the problem they're having in LA with Andrew Bynum. Washington might get better. Their record was 20-46. Look for them to get into the 30s. 25, 30. Not bad. Very, very consistent for them. Who I think was one of the biggest surprises is going to be Cleveland. Cleveland has the 4th pick this year. Look for them. I think that they're young, they're athletic, they're well coached. Byron Scott is a great coach. Look for them to get into I think that they'll be in the playoff bubble. Maybe in like that 30-35 win team. Sacramento, I think, will continue to shine. Their record was 22. Look for them to get into probably a few more wins. Don't think they'll make the playoffs. Portland, who I think started out really good, but they were missing Brandon Roy like crazy. Portland might get to Portland might do better. I think they might wind up staying the same. I think they need more around them. Jamal Crawford didn't really help them as much as they wanted to. Golden State, I think they're very well coached. Will stay consistent. Their record, I don't see them gaining much, but I do think they'll wind up getting better. Don't think they'll make the playoffs, though. Toronto won't make the playoffs. Detroit, a little bit, not exactly a bubble team, but look, defense. Not that horrible on defense. Lawrence Frank, defensive-minded coach, not a horrible thing. So I do see them getting, I do see them getting better, not getting worse. Uh, New Orleans gets 10th pick. They won't get too better. Portland. Milwaukee, I don't know. Monta Ellis, Brandon Jennings, don't know how I feel about that. Maybe they can coexist. I don't think they can. They were in the bubble last year. I look for them to remain in that bubble or get to that 8th seed. That's about it, though. I don't think they'll get any farther than that. Phoenix's record 33-33. I look for them to make a run to see what happens. To give Utah a run for their money. Of course, it was a 66-game schedule, but I look for Phoenix to be a bubble team, and Houston always gets a winning record, but for some reason never winds up getting into the playoffs. Last time I think they got into the playoffs, they still had Yao Ming and T-Mac. So Houston, I think, will make the playoffs. They're going to fight with Phoenix, though, if everything goes well. And Phoenix and Utah, I think those teams will wind up fighting with each other. So I'm interested to see what winds up happening with them. So my playoff teams are either in the West, I would say, is either Phoenix, Houston, of the lottery teams, and in the East, I'll say Milwaukee and Detroit. I mean, Milwaukee has a good chance. Detroit and Cleveland have a puncher's chance if they really try and if they really buy into their coaches' into their coaches' mindsets, their coaches' offense and defense. I think that both of them have a puncher's chance. My opinion, do I think it's rigged? Stars get to say what they say in the league. I do think that David Stern likes to see a certain teams win at certain times. I do know he loves the higher marquee teams, or the teams that have the most media around them, or wind up getting like a nice story, like the Jeremy Lin story, of course. Teams that have a good story around them, he likes to. I believe he favors them a bit more. So, do I think that the league is rigged? To a degree, yes, because I think David Stern last year wanted to have the Dallas, Miami Heat, but would love to have LA in the playoffs, love to have New York in the playoffs, wants to have the Boston Miamis, wants to have those teams that are going to fight and claw and bloody and batter each other up. So I do believe to some degree that it is. They say it's not, but I don't know. I think that there's too many coincidences for the league to say that it's not rigged. So whatever you guys think, feel free to comment on it. I might be wrong about it, but that's the wonders of YouTube. That's the wonders of giving an opinion. Whatever you guys think is awesome, be sure to leave a comment. And post a link at the bottom of everything with all the information. And if you can, please subscribe to my other channel, if possible. So thank you guys. Bye.